Welcome to Node.js Foundation CTC Core Technical Committee meeting for August 31st, 2016. And let's get right to it with the stand-up. Is Anna here?
Yeah, I am here. And so yeah, last week was mostly just I had a couple of own PRs, nothing big. Tracked down a SAC fault in V8, and otherwise just the usual. And next would be Bradley.
So not too much here, just going around and explaining the rewritten proposal for making our ES modules EP actually compliant to the spec, and now trying to get some stuff sorted out for getting people to attend TC39 in September. That's it.
Next is Ben. Is he here? Okay, if Ben's not here, next will be Nikita.
I did some work on the npm code search tool and some comments on issues and pull requests as usual. Next is Colin. Or perhaps Ivan.
Yeah, last week just did the 6.5.0 release. Well, that was kind of this week too. So next is Jeremiah.
I participated in more module discussions. I reviewed the promises warning PR and some other pull requests and miscellaneous stuff. And I discovered more odd standard IO related quirks. More on that soon. Next is Fedora.
Nothing really new for me, just working on some issues and reviewing some pull requests. Next is Josh.
Just looked over the debugging docs some, and I've been working on improving those, and thinking about the next Diag WG meeting in a week or two. Next is Michael.
Right, so did a bunch of work around adding in new machines for PPC-AX and Linux 1, debugging an issue with the add-on tests on AIX where they were starting to run before the VM was completely built, some initial discussion on working to get nightly code coverage published, and having that published to codecoverage.nodejs.org, starting to prepare for my Node Interactive presentations, one which is a build workgroup update and a postmortem workgroup update, and then just general PR review, landing, and keeping up with the issues. Next is Michael Rogers.
Heyo, I have just been dealing with a bunch of follow-up items from the board meeting on Monday. That's my main task lately. Nothing too fancy or interesting. Now I'm also trying to get, things together for this TC39 meeting as well. I don't have the agenda in front of me, so somebody's going to need to tell me who the next person is.
Brian White.
Hello. So I didn't do a whole lot, just landed a couple of old PRs that I had, and the usual of reviewing PRs and commenting on issues. Next is Ali.
So I've been working on some issues related to V8 5.1 and also the integration with 5.4. And next is Jen Turner.
I'm just observing like last week. I don't have an update.
Next is Rob.
Yeah, sorry. So lots of Node Foundation business, including board meeting, lots of build working group work, including a major ARM cluster cleanup, and adding some new hardware there, chasing some OSX resources, which we should have resolved one way or another within the next week or two. I added a Clang 341 CI node for some basic testing there. Have a blog post sitting in the queue in Node.js.org for review. And a bunch of other little minor things. Not a whole lot in Node.js/Node though. Next is Trevor.
Main thing has been async wrap. I'm finishing up the implementation and almost have it ready to throw into a PR. The initial will be sans docs and tests, but at least people can get their fingers on it. Did some PR review, and I filed an issue about desktop prop not working on Windows 64-bit build, but I think that's probably V8 specific. I was just making sure. Next is Rich.
Hi, so I onboarded Luigi Pinca, I hope I'm saying his name correctly, and Daniel Bevanias, I hope I'm saying his name correctly. I helped a few first-time and second-time committers do that, get more commits in as well. I'm looking to do more of that. Talk to me if you're interested in that. I believe Evan is. And I am trying to get CI green again without making too much of a pest of myself to the build working group and the crypto folks and whatnot. I do have one PR in that I put in the minutes that if you know anything about the C++ crypto land, please take a look. And with that, I think, did we miss anybody? Doesn't look like it. So let's move on to, I believe the next step is to review last week's meeting. So we had the Alpha Nerd, we had Miles voted into CTC, and I believe the only to-do item there was Rod to do whatever onboarding tasks there were. I assume those happened.
Yes.
Great. And then we had the buffer hard deprecates the buffer constructor, and we agreed to land the hard deprecation of buffer without new, and to continue the second option discussion in GitHub. Can someone confirm that that happened, Anna or somebody else? Okay, okay, we'll make a note to confirm that that actually happened. So there's then there was FS, don't alter the user provided options. We approved that change. And then undeprecate exists sync. This is what we're going to discuss this week. We tabled that. There's adding Google Analytics tracking, which we also tabled. I see Michael's here. Michael Rogers is here today. That's great for that, but Ben is not. So we'll deal with that when we get to it. We have introduced a staging branch for the stable release. We're going to talk about that later this week, although I'm moving to table it, but we'll get there. And seek legal advice on, yeah, we moved the CTC agenda for that. I'm not even going to finish saying it. And landing the Node EP for ABI, Michael Dawson got all the things he needed out of the meeting from that. So I think we're done there. Have I mischaracterized anything or missed anything? Okay, in that case, let's move to the FS undeprecate exists sync. It's the third item in the minutes, but we agreed it would be the first. Oh, good. Josh is about to move it. And I believe, was it Jeremiah who put this one on the agenda?
Yeah, it doesn't really look like there's been any discussion from us in the past week. The person who brought this up did a little bit of detailed investigation versus, sorry, access with the FOK flag versus stat to see if there was any differences and didn't really come up with anything. But that's a little bit out of my realm, so I don't really know. If this is going to be something that's going to be done, it still needs our sign off in one way or other because it's undeprecating something. That's all I really have to say about it.
So I see Jeremiah just added a comment expressing concern about Windows.
Does anyone have background on this issue about what the difference between stat and axis was for edge cases?
What are you worried about Windows, Jeremiah? Might be something I can check into.
Probably need to take a look at the issue thread then. If FS stat is different than FS axis in
Windows.
any significant cases anywhere. The issue on this issue really is not that. The issue is, do we want to undeprecate exists sync?
And is there anybody who's strongly in favor of doing that on the CTC?
Personally, I feel like I'm not gonna fight for it, but also I don't see a super compelling reason again for leaving it out, especially for the fact that this is something that has had a lot of community push to keep in.
I feel like this one really needs a CTC or even a collaborator champion to make this get through. Otherwise, it's going to be, it's just going to continue to be stalled with nobody particularly interested in making it go forward.
Yeah, and there are definitely.
Sorry, Trot, go.
No, please go ahead.
That's all I was going to say was that I don't see anyone really picking this up as something they want to champion. That's all.
And on the other side of the coin, we definitely have CTC folks who are opposed to it, like Brian.
Should we have the original poster come to a meeting and argue for it?
There's more than one original poster at this point.
Okay.
So, I think that's probably a good idea. I mean, you know, even if we can have one that is willing to come and represent the case, might be helpful.
I mean, all the cases are pretty much laid out in this thread.
Okay, so what is a proposed outcome for today? I mean, I don't think we're going to identify a champion, or are we?
Look, as unfortunate as this is, without a champion amongst the collaborator group, I just don't see this moving forward. Otherwise, it's just going to continue to be blocked. So we probably need to just ping collaborators and say, is there anyone here that is actually particularly interested in this? Otherwise, it's dead in the water.
Well, okay, so how much of a champion do you mean? I mean, like, the code's there, the tests are there. Is it just up to one of us to say, hey, I really want this in, and to make the argument in a meeting?
That and on GitHub as well. I mean, we've got a whole collaborator group here to convince. Somebody needs to do the convincing work, and there's not a lot of that happening, except for people who are not collaborators, which is, you know, that's fair. Like, we have a lot of people that want this, and that they are stakeholders in Node.
But there are people religiously opposed to this thing. They won't, like, no argument would convince them otherwise.
Okay, well, I mean that's the real problem then. If there's nobody around that has enough respect from like within the core contributors group to do that convincing work, then it's just not going to happen.
No, to be honest, like there's one reason why I haven't picked it up. Like I'd be totally cool seeing it through the normal process, but I don't have time to jump on and argue the number of arguments I need to make in order to get this through. It's not. Does that make sense? Like,
well, wait, hold on. But you could throw those to a vote though, if we really needed to get past it. I mean, like what are? I mean, if people are religiously opposed to it, they're also going to have to convince everybody else to be opposed to it. I mean, at least of the participants, right?
So how about we ping Node.js collaborators, asking if there's anybody among the collaborators who feels very strongly in favor of ExistSync, and ask them to please get involved and lay out the case, et cetera, and because we already have involvement from people who are opposed to it, and just sort of see where that lands, and look at this again in a week. And if nobody's among the collaborators, of the 80 some odd collaborators, if nobody has the time and energy and inclination and feels positively about ExistSync, then I think I fear whether it's just or not, Rod is right, it's dead in the water.
Yeah, and if it keeps on coming back, as Michael said, we can have a vote here and just bring it down to proper voting. It's the fact that it keeps on coming back is a concern, because we're unable to reach resolution. So how about we reach resolution?
Okay, if there's no objections to this approach, I move that we go on to the next item on the agenda, and I'll take the to-do item of pinging in that thread, unless somebody else wants to ping in that thread, to see if we can drum up some people internal to the project who feel strongly and positively about that change.
Just so you know, William Kapke mentioned in IRC that he thinks maybe discussing this at the Collaboration Summit would be a good idea.
Perhaps there will be 2 collaboration summits, right? One in Europe and one in North America.
Yeah, I don't know which one he had in mind.
I think that probably excludes the majority of people who are actually vocal stakeholders in this.
Okay, okay.
Let's move.
So, yes, does anybody want to continue discussing this at this time?
Let's go on.
Okay, Josh, do you remember what I said would be the second item?
Yeah, Google Analytics probably. That's a quick one.
Yes, that was it. So Michael Rogers, I believe.
Yep.
Did you see the question from Fedor?
Yep. Well, yeah, I answered the questions that were in there. Essentially, like the people with access would be a couple members of the website admin team, which is a small group of people. 2 currently have access, but if another one wanted access, they could get it. And these are just the people that are like the administrators of the website. And then basically internal foundation employees have access. That's about it. And in the future, more foundation employees may have access, but we wouldn't want to open it up to more people than that.
So before we continue conversation on this, last week we tabled it because Ben had the strongest objections and we didn't want to make a decision without his input. Do we want to table it again for that reason?
So this is my only caveat here, is that like we're not arguing about the usefulness of having this kind of data, right? Like we're not saying we shouldn't do this and we shouldn't try to understand our users and that there's not value there. Ben is making an argument that he doesn't like the tool that we're using, but at the same time, Ben is not offering to run a different tool and basically replace it himself. So
Okay,
I don't really know what I don't really know what to do with that objection.
So go ahead, Jerry.
Here's my proposal, Rich. So we did give warning for that we'd come back to it this week, and it's come back. Let's just vote on it and move forward, so we don't have this thing hanging around. Because, like, frankly, I don't think there's anyone else on this call or last week's call that is opposed to this. So unless we have somebody coming on to argue the case here, we can vote and move forward. And I know that sounds like bulldozing, but there's been plenty of time for this to resolve.
I would agree with that. Does anyone have anything they want to say on this or to what Rod just proposed? I know that Nikita and I believe Fedor had questions earlier.
I think my question is answered now, so I don't have any objections. Thank you, Michael, by the way.
Okay, does anybody oppose moving to a vote? All right, let's do that then. So one day I want to try just having everybody type their votes in the sideboard rather than saying it out loud, but let's just continue with saying it out loud. Fedor, did you have something you wanted to say?
No, I just clicked it.
Okay, great. So all in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, please say nay. All right, let the record show this has been approved.
We didn't get to that part, but I'm just going to abstain from it because I don't really have particularly strong feelings either way.
I apologize for that. Okay, great. And then I really need to pull up the right issue here. So somebody remember if there was a third item, or should we just start going through things in order?
Sorry, I forgot to turn on my microphone. I wanted to say that I would also abstain from this vote just because I don't feel like voting for this. I don't have any strong objections though, so I will abstain.
Great. Thank you. If anybody else would like to abstain, feel free to say so now or to put it in the sideboard.
And I'm assuming I'm just putting the next steps are merge.
That sounds right to me. Okay, so, and Brian is abstaining. The third item that was mentioned specifically in the comment thread was introduce a staging branch for stable release streams. I propose that there's no rush on this and we table it a week because I think that the best case for conversation would be to have at least both Miles and Jeremiah in the room. Does anybody feel differently about this topic?
I do. I think Miles made his position on it pretty clear. And I actually, before was not so, I didn't really care either way, but after the previous release, it was a lot more difficult. Not having a staging branch to land PRs on. Because I had already built the binaries and all of that, and then something landed, and so I had to go back and redo the release.
And I would say at this point, I think everybody who's done a release recently, or almost the majority of people who have done releases recently, have said that have come out in favor of this, said it would be a good idea, or at least haven't said absolutely not. I think we need to take that into consideration. And and it's something that we can always, we can try it, and if it's just too hard, if it's too much process in the way, then we can always go back to the way we're doing it now.
I actually quite like Miles's argument in the meeting issue thread about consistency, helping onboarding, and teaching people how things work. I think that's actually quite a good argument. But I agree, James, that this is really up to people who are doing releases. And if the people who are currently doing releases want this, then so be it.
I have a question about the previous vote.
One of my chances being able to get in that driveway.
I have no idea.
You don't know what that.
Is that sound token? No.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, Nikita. Go ahead, Nikita,
I have
please.
a question about the previous vote. As I see it, we have 18 CTC members listed in readme, 3 abstained. That means that there are 15 left, and 7 are in favor. That is less than 1/2.
Okay, that's a reasonable point. How about the action for that one is to
Go to
take
GitHub
that?
and get the remaining votes.
Yeah, if there's remaining votes, or maybe perhaps those remaining votes won't come. So yeah.
Yeah, we have 13 CTC members here, so the number 7 was based on me listening. So maybe we should revisit that. Maybe there's 10.
Am I listed as in favor? Because I am in favor, but I did not say aye, and I probably should
didn't
have.
list the individual name because I couldn't really do that.
We just count on the sidebar.
Okay, let's do that really fast. I know that people who are dialed in might not have access to the sidebar. If you're dialed in, say your name. If you're in favor, please. Okay, I didn't hear anybody. If you're not dialed in and you have access to the sidebar and you are in favor, you can just type aye into the sidebar like I did. If you are opposed, you can type nay, and if you are abstaining, you can type abstain.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get back to the sidebar.
Michael Dawson, do you just want to tell me your vote and I'll type it in for you?
I'd say I'm in favor.
Okay, it looks like we've reached the quorum at this point. Is that right?
I count 8, 9.
Okay.
And 3 abstain.
Great.
We're still missing one person apparently, but it's okay.
Nikita, thank you for keeping us honest and on process. So if there's no objection, then let's move back to the staging branch issue. I believe Jeremiah looked like he was trying to unmute himself and say something. So why don't we start there?
I mean, I think it's a little bit disingenuous to say that I haven't done a release recently, not in the past 2 or 3 releases maybe, but I find the consistency argument reasonably compelling. I believe we brought that up last week to my memory, and it seemed like that wasn't the case, so I'm a little bit confused. I mean, I still think it's a little bit strange the way we have treated current or stable releases, where we aim to always ship what's there and not hold things back. I think we need to make sure that this doesn't start doing that. I never thought about someone merging something while doing a release. That seems like a very big problem. I'm fine with it really at this point. Go ahead.
Okay, so then if there's no objections, why don't we just make it official and move to a vote? Does anybody object to just doing a quick vote on this? All right, let's do that then. Type your vote aye, nay, or abstain into the sidebar. And if you don't have access to the sidebar, just speak your name and your vote.
Sorry, I missed the question. So what we are voting for right now?
This is whether to whether to create a staging branch for the stable release stream or not.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Josh, is that working for you, getting the votes in the sidebar, or is that actually more trouble?
No, that's perfect. Do you guys want me to record who voted what?
Numbers might be good. I don't know about who voted how is necessary.
It might be good to get names, just so we can review them.
Yeah, that's what we used to do. I think I counted 11.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like 11 to 12. I'll get them all.
All right, are you guys able to hear me now?
Yes, James.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. I attempted to vote aye on that.
That would be 12.
Okay, I've put that in the sidebar.
Divide the votes somehow in the sidebar because it's hard to see when the previous vote ended and this one started.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear Nikita.
I wanted to say that we also perhaps need to divide the votes in the sidebar because it's hard to see when the previous vote ended and this one started.
Yeah, Jeremiah voted first in the sidebar on this one, but that's a good point.
So like maybe I should type something like we are now voting on, and then put the issue number, and then all the votes can go below that. That kind of.
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
Okay, if nobody objects, I'd like to move on to the process for determining supported. And since I put this on the agenda, I'll frame it. And I'd like to say that I think we can probably just take the CTC agenda label off for now. The build working group apparently discussed this, and Rod posted their proposal to the issue. And I think it's a really good proposal and would like to discuss it on GitHub. So does anybody object to just removing that from the...
I think one action item that this group could have is to request the build working group come up with an initial list. Just for to start the discussion, build working group, please come up with an initial list and bring it back to the CTC, and the CTC will discuss it further.
Yeah, I was going to let that, because I saw that that was in your proposal. I was going to let that sit for a week for people to comment on it, but I'm actually fine making that request now if you think that would be useful just to move forward.
I think it will be, just otherwise this will just fizzle out. So let's put it on the build working group agenda, which is actually in 3 weeks' time anyway. So there's going to be a delay. But let's get that on the agenda there.
Object to us doing that. If there is no objections, I'm just going to assume that there's consensus on that issue. Okay, I didn't hear any objections, so let's just put down that we're going to that we've requested the build work group assemble initial list of the three, whatever the three supported platforms. I suppose we want all three of them. Is that right? The three levels.
Let's start there and see how it works out, because perhaps once we have that list, we look at it and think something different. But let's start with them.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, and by the way, this just something to clarify as well. This is not just platforms. There's like permutations involved in this as well that we probably should include. So permutations about how it's used, what compilers are used, whether it's shared builds, all those sort of things we probably want to include in that. How, you know,
Yeah,
but basically a minimal description of what we officially support, because right now in CI we don't actually include a lot of the stuff that we sort of vaguely say we support. Like we don't do shared build testing anywhere.
And we only test one version of OS X and all.
Yes, that's a big omission as well. Yep.
Okay, are there any objections to moving on to the next issue? Okay, in that case, I guess it's child process. Fix shell spawn with auto run. Does anyone know who put this on?
Yeah, I think that was Joao putting that on. Is he here? I don't know if he's not on the CTC. So look, let me. This is the Windows one, isn't it?
I can give background on this. I talked with Joao about, or it might be Bartosz. Do you want me to tell you what it's about?
Yeah, do that.
Essentially, when we shell out to command a CMD in Windows, by default, it will run some things that are specified in like a registry key. And he's proposing, that was somebody felt that was a bug, and he's proposing that when we shell out to CMD, we don't run those automatically run commands. That makes sense? Like when you're in CMD, when you spin up CMD, it would by default run those commands. So when Node shells out to CMD, it does. And this proposal is to not run those from Node.
So if you look in the issue thread, there is a link to a bug report that somebody filed on Node 0x archive that where they ran into this problem. And specifically for this person, it was that they had a corporate group policy in place that had an auto run which did a CD into H drive, and when they were running exec with Node, it would do that, and they weren't able to do some things by default in exec. There was also a question about what other platforms do. So Colin raised that one, and the response was that Python doesn't even go as far as we do now. They just do a /c, and they have some trouble with escaping spaces, but that's not related to this. So Python doesn't do this. But there's no other responses to that. My response is, so I'm happy to trust Windows people. Like Josh, maybe you can go and find someone at Microsoft that can tell us what, if there's a Microsoft opinion on how to do this. But it seems to me that if you have something in auto run for command, then overriding that and turning that off sort of needs to be explicit. Otherwise, it should run. Like that just seems intuitively correct. Maybe not, but it seems like you set that, then you should run it. And if you want to override that, then you should probably not use exec. You should probably spawn CMD. I don't think we have any Windows experts on here other than you, Josh. And Joao is really our remaining Windows subject matter expert in that thread on the collaborators group.
He would ask. Basically, I lean towards what you said, Rod, that if it's been registered, for example, through group policy, then we shouldn't be the ones overriding it. I can check more around here if there's, other opinions. That's what I think we're going to find, though, also.
Right, and so, Rich, my suggestion here, unless anyone has any objections, is to move on because we just don't have enough subject matter experts here.
Okay, I think we should also ping Joao and ask specifically why he put this on the issue, because I have a suspicion that it might have just been It's a Semver major change. It needs 2 LGTMs from CTC, and it
That's
doesn't
it.
have that yet.
That was the only reason he did it. Yep.
Okay, so Josh, I'm sorry, Josh or Rod, can you summarize what the next step is?
Josh is going to go into Microsoft and see if there's any Microsoft opinions. Other than that, we're taking it back to GitHub to get further discussion amongst Windows experts.
Okay, and
I think we'll take it off the agenda too. Actually, we'll take it off the agenda until it makes further progress in there and somebody wants to put the label back on.
Okay, so we'll take the label off, but we'll tell Joao that he should feel free to put it back on if it feels stalled in another week or something.
Great, I'll do that right now.
Super, thank you, Rod. Does anyone else have opinions on this, or is it time? Otherwise, I will move on if no one has anything to say. Great. I believe the next one is Nikita's and Collins. It's about moving the ecosystem detection tool. Who wants to frame this?
That's the tool I have been using for doing code search over the NPM dataset, and that is the tool that actually builds the dataset. So I rewrote it from a set of bash scripts to JavaScript and started documenting it. And now it has reached the state where it actually was completely rewritten in JavaScript, and it has some initial documentation that allows people to use it and perhaps to contribute to it. So I think that it is ready for moving in.
Okay, so in the issue, I see only supportive voices, which is great. Is there anybody that has concerns or questions about this? Anybody who has anything they want to say on any side of this?
I will note that Chris did a good amount of work on making an indexer of sorts for all the like code paths that stuff could take to. It's a little bit more detailed than this in NPM, but I don't think he ever got to a point where data was accessible out of something like that. I think he got it indexed in a database of sorts, or at least set stuff up to do that. That's just like an aside, pretty much. It'd be nice to get his opinion on it, I guess.
This one actually doesn't use any database. It uses a plain for something it uses text files, for something it uses JSON files compressed with LZ4, and so it doesn't use a database.
So is there the sense of everyone that we should move this to a vote and that it's fairly uncontroversial, or would that be rushing things?
I just want to raise the question of who would take responsibility for this. Would this come directly under the CTC, or is it going to have its own maintenance group, or like who, or is it like who's going to own it? For example, if there's controversial issues to resolve in there, do they get resolved by the CTC?
I'm not sure, but I am willing to support it And if we need, or if we would like to create a group for that, for supporting that, I will join it. Or I think that I will be fine with either solution on this.
Okay, I suspect that the CTC probably won't want to own this because there'll be a limited number of people that want to care about the details of it. So it probably needs its own group at least, not necessarily a working group, but a team that's an explicit group, and that'll probably have to go into the README at least.
Yeah, and it probably needs the other just basic governance stuff that we've added in the other ones, like the license and the contributing and all that.
Yeah, we've used that as a gating thing in the past for moving things into the org. So get those things done, then it can come in.
So I think what we'd asked other cases was to say, okay, add those in, then open an issue in the TSC repo saying, can we move this in? Once that's approved, then we just move it over.
That sounds like a good plan, actually. Palm this off to the TSC. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. So Colin and Nikita and others, if you want to prepare it and then open an issue on TSC repo. If you want help with how to prepare it, can I suggest that you ping William Kapke, because he's really good on that stuff.
Yeah, also Node report. That's one that we recently did that, and I put the base governance in there. So if you're looking for something to copy, that's one that we used recently. It's pretty much just like the working group ones, but.
Nikita, did you have something you were trying to say?
No, I just listening.
Does anybody else? Oh, go ahead. Okay, does anybody else have something they want to say on this topic, or is the consensus that the next steps as outlined by Rod and Michael, that this should go to the TSC and a team should be added to the README and a license and a few other things. But does anybody have anything else to add to this or feel differently? Okay, then if there are no objections, I'm going to say we should move on. Is that okay?
Let's do that.
Okay, so the last item, is that right? We're on the last item now? Yeah. Async API proposal. I have to imagine this is Trevor.
Sorry, couldn't find the tab. Yep, it's for the EP. There are, I've updated the EP some. Actually, I'm in the middle of updating it again. There's an API that turned out to be totally useless with the way things went, which is great. The implementation itself, I am happy with where it's going, and I'd say it's 80% the way there before post the PR. I'm gonna keep working on it for the rest of the day and hopefully have it up by tomorrow morning for review. As far as the EP itself, I mean, it's except for that one change of the now useless API, it's pretty much right on point with where development is going. So Rod, I believe you and I talked about this. My brain's so deep into this right now. I'm not.
There was the question about renaming the API.
Oh yeah. So async wrap is a total like implementation leak, and so I've renamed it async hooks, So like when you require, you would require async hooks instead of async wrap. And then like the process binding would still be async wrap because that's the C++ class, and that would follow, you know, the convention of everything else. But then the actual API name would be async events. I have already squatted the npm module for that, so there won't be any conflicts.
Wait, did you say async events or async hooks?
Oh crap, async hooks.
Do you have a hoped for outcome of this conversation?
That everybody's okay with the rename. Since this is going to be public API, figure people might want to say in what the name will be of the require.
Cool. So this is all about that about the API name.
Yeah.
Not 100%. So just to keep people in the loop, since we did sign off on a previous version of this EP, there have been a couple of minor things that are similar to that. So pre and post are now called before and after. So before and after a callback is called. And also there are APIs for embedders so that pooling libraries and stuff like, I think it's like Redis and stuff can use it. There's native API for that with a async hook class for C++. And a JS API that pretty much mirrors everything you would expect from the consumer API.
I think the way forward on this one is actually to, I really hate saying this, but to defer it again for next week, and then next week have a clearly outlined thing that we are voting on in the meeting issue. So I know most of this is in the EP pull request, but I doubt that everyone's seen it. So let's come up with a clear voting statement for next week, so that we can move forward and merge that, or not.
Okay, then after I throw up the PR, I'll cross-link that with the EP so that people can reference it back and review the code.
Where's the code? Is that in a pull request, or where is that right now?
It's up and it's in a branch on my repo, but I haven't turned it into a pull request. It's almost pull request ready, but it doesn't run. There are a couple. This is something that unfortunately cannot be done in pieces. It's kind of an all or nothing thing, and it's almost all there. Just a couple important bits are not there.
Do we have any documentation in that pull request yet? In that branch?
Yeah, I've commented the crap out of the code. Almost every line has
But
explanation.
you haven't started API docs at all, though.
No.
Okay.
Josh, go ahead.
No, the only question I have was there a dash in the hooks? Not a very big deal. Don't worry about it.
No, there can't be.
In the name?
It's camel case. It's camel case async hook.
No. The require is underscore async underscore hooks. That follows. Okay, first off, you can't have a dash. Part of our build requirement is you can't have a dash because it'll screw with our C++ compacting thing, and nothing else.
You could ignore that.
And
it's okay.
Okay.
He just wanted to know what to put in the minutes. That's all.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Okay, cool. So we have a clear next step for Trevor. Is there anything else we need to talk about on this week, or should we just prepare to vote on a clear statement next week?
Yeah, just hopefully everybody will have a chance to, at the least, review the EP, since at that point the implementation will be there. The EP will perfectly reflect the implementation and not some, theoretical thing. So if you don't have time to review the code, hopefully you at least have time to look over the EP so that you can understand what you're voting on.
I did want to raise, I think is the cutoff date for V7 tomorrow or the 12th when James is starting to cut stuff? Meaning, will this make V7 or is it too late or does that matter?
This is not technically a breaking change.
Cutoff date is the 12th.
Okay, so I
cutoff
think,
date for-
wait, who's talking? Is that James?
Yep, this is James. The cutoff date is September 12th for some of our majors into P7. After that, it'll be by exception only.
Jeremiah, go ahead.
I might be wrong, and we'll have to see a pull request, but I think this was going to end up being Semver Minor.
I believe that was the plan, yes. And we've already been backporting a huge chunk of changes to V4.
Yeah,
right.
So I don't think that will be a particularly big deal.
The plan, I believe, that was discussed 2 or 3 months ago was that this would be in before 6 went LTS. Is that at the same time 7? When is 6 going LTS?
When 7 releases publicly as a not IRC.
Right. It'll be mid to late October.
Okay.
So we're already past 2 o'clock, and I think I would like to propose that we end this discussion, if that's okay with everybody. If there's something somebody really wants to say it right now. All right, cool. Then, unless there are any objections, oh wait, we have to do Q&A, don't we? Hey, Jeremiah, are there any questions?
There have not been, and someone just left, so there's now only 3 people watching.
Okay.
I haven't been looking at IRC, but most of the questions we get are asked somewhere in between, it seems. And usually, I always put out a call in the chat for that at the beginning of the meeting. So.
Okay, so in other words, it's fair to just say there are probably no questions and we can move on.
Yep.
Okay, then if there are no objections, I'd like to propose that we close out the public portion of the meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Call recording off.